the learning curve on pegs is after you make 2 or 3, then it gets a lot easier really fast, and I think it's pretty fun. So what we're doing is riving pegs out of a nice billet of straight grained hardwood. And ideal, when I say straight grained, you want something that looks like this. And it's really hard to tell if something looks like that from the outside of the tree. We had a little nasty surprise when we split it, is there was a branch that we didn't, like that branch broke off or was trimmed off early on, and so we didn't see it on the outside of the log, but when we split into it, we're like, oh. So there'll be some spoiled pegs here. But there's enough straight grain stuff. This stuff is splitting really nice.
What kind of wood is it?
This is ash.
Ash.
So really good woods for making pegs are straight grained stuff that splits along the grain well.
Yeah.
Ash is awesome. Red oak, white oak,
Okay.
locust works pretty well.
Yeah.
Hickory, although hickory doesn't really grow around here much, but oak and ash are really the most common thing. But I've made them out of locust, and that's really nice.
Black locust? Or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
black locust. So if you don't have a nice piece, and this was a large log, it needs to be a nice piece, so like kind of down near the butt of the tree and really big. You don't want to make pegs out of a small tree, because ideally, like the heartwood is what you really want to make the pegs out of. So we laid out a grid that went right through the pith center of this tree,
Yeah.
and that grid is 1.5 inch grid. It's a little bit bigger than 1.5 inch, because in an ideal world we split these billets out, and then by eye you just quarter those 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch billets. And in a perfect world, you get 4 3/4 by 3/4 pegs. It doesn't always work out that way. You end up getting a little bit of grain run out or something that looks like this, and you get some kindling, and that's fine too. But hopefully in this log we'll get enough. We should get enough for more than the pegs that we need. So you need really good straight grain, good quality stock to make pegs quickly and efficiently. So when we split it, so this tool is called a froe, and then we're using a Commander with a sacrificial head on it. We just put a piece of plywood on there, because just the wood on the end would just get all mangled up when it hits the froe. You never hit this with a metal hammer, because it'll peen over the edges. So this is a tool that, well, I'll just demonstrate splitting this part out. So once you get the big round split with a big tool like this is called a froe mallet. And then you put the froe right on your line. And with the froe, we're always splitting things in halves, because it's always going to follow the path of least resistance. So if I put it right here, it would split out to daylight really quick.
Yeah.
And then you just pry it.
Is that where to and fro came from?
That's a good question.
Whoa.
It's like connecting dots. You know?
I don't know.
I don't know what the 2 part would be, but
Well, when I hit this in here,
How do you do
I have to move it to and fro. I don't know.
split it in half too?
yeah.
2, you make 2.
But so this one isn't.
Yeah.
This one isn't going to really work out well. I might even not try any further with that. That's firewood, because I can see a knot there, there, and there. So that is just trash. But just to show you, splitting things in half, it splits pretty nicely if the grain is nice and straight. If I lay it out so that things don't come out evenly in halves, again, like if I put this right here and split it, it's gonna quickly shoot out to that side, and then I'll spoil these pegs, and then I'll have these pegs will be really fat at the bottom, and it's just more work. So what I would do on this piece is split it this way. And it's not a perfect world, it's never exactly in half, but as close to half as you can get. And that split pretty nice and straight. And then, okay, here I have 3 billets. So I make a judgment call. I was like, I'm gonna put it right here, and let's just see what happens. That actually worked out pretty well. So then this one I can split exactly in half. And And I'm doing this over a piece of wood since we have the cement floor here. And that's pretty nice billet. And then I'll split that just by eye into quarters.
So you grid it 1.5 inches, and then you split that 1.5 inches into quarters.
Yep. And that's a pretty skinny peg, but this one is about perfect. So I'm going to leave some of this for y'all to try, splitting this out. At this point, you don't need this anymore. You can do all this work just one person with this. This is just a piece of hop hornbeam. It's called a fro mallet, and it's just a rustic flintstone looking thing, and it gets dinged up, although I've had this one for pretty many years. I'll just make another one when it goes up. The root flare of a hop hornbeam is really good. It's right where the tree comes out of the ground. The grain's going all over the place because where the roots come out are just like the branches. It's real dense.
Super hard, yeah.
And it doesn't have to be pretty. You're going to mangle it up. You knock the corners and make an octagon of the right size. And I have a little hole right here to tell me what size that is. You can also use your tape to, I basically want to get it down to a perfect, or pretty close to perfect 3/4 by 3/4. And right now I'm a little heavy here, and I'm probably even more heavy there. So what I want to try to do is make it, can everybody see how it flares out a little bit right there? So with my draw knife, and this tool is called a shave horse, which is just a foot operating, it's a bench with a foot operating clamp on it. And I'm going to take the draw knife, and in this case, bevel down is probably the best bet. It really depends on the draw knife. Some of them work better, bevel up. You can kind of tell by the angle of the handles. If I was like this, the handle angle, that's okay, but this feels a little bit more natural to me. So I'm going to try to make a perfect square all the way down this piece. So everybody see how that works? Pretty simple. Now the interesting thing is, because this grain wasn't perfectly straight, it goes like that a little bit. And that's okay. This peg will be a little bit bent, but the grain will all be contiguous in the peg, because when you split it with the fro, it splits with the grain. So this makes some really nice shavings for fire starter. So it looks pretty square there, and a little bit more to go here. And I'm just going to take it and I'm going to hold it over this hole, and I should just be able to see the flat on all four sides of this hole that's right here. There's two holes. This is for 1-inch pegs, this is for 13/16" pegs. We're making 13/16" pegs. So once I have it square and about the right size, which is 3/4, and it looks pretty even all along, then I'm going to knock the four corners and make an octagon. If I skip a step and if I don't make this perfectly square, or I make it square but it's too big, then when I make the octagon, then I got an octagon that's too big, and then I got 8 sides that I got to clean up. So the first step is to make a perfectly square 3/4 by 3/4, and I say perfectly.
Can you say what you said again about when you hold it up to the 13/16 hole, you want to see
You know,
daylight a little bit?
around on the 4 facets, like I can see it, you can't from where you are. The corners are,
They're overlapping.
yeah,
You
but I can see
about,
just
like
barely,
a 1/16 of it.
a little less than that actually. I can just barely see.
Okay.
Because you're not going to round the peg, you're just going to
Yeah.
knock the corners.
I am not making a dowel. I'm making an octagon. That is very clear. It's actually, yeah, do not make a dowel, please. But to make an octagon, I first need to make a square. That's the first step. And if you disregard that step, it's kind of, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to spend a lot of time shaving a thing and it may or may not fit. So make a square that's the right size first, and then octagonize it. Knock the 4 corners, and ideally I want even facets all the way around. So you'll see in this shave horse there's a little notch right here that kind of helps hold the piece on edge. And I'm going to knock that facet, and I'm going to knock it here. I got one more to go. And I look at it and it's like, I want it to look kind of like a stop sign. Even stop sign all the way around. And if it's not even, maybe I need to take off a little bit more here or there. Then I'm going to spin it and do the same at the other end. And sometimes the tendency is people get a good octagon here and it's pudgy in the middle. Try to not have it pudgy in the middle. But I look down at it and it's a fairly even octagon. Again, I can hold it here and I can start seeing a little bit of that circle around each of those sides. So the idea is this, the octagon, if I measure it across, if I make a 3/4 by 3/4 and then I turn it into octagon, if I measure across the points, it's going to be 13/16.
Point to point. Not
Point,
facet to
long
facet.
point to long point. So yeah, not facet to facet, point to point. So the idea is when I put it in my hole, the corners of the octagon bite into the hole and the flats have a little tiny bit of space. That's what I'm shooting for. And then I look at it and say, this end looks a little skinnier. I need to taper the peg. So I'm going to take the skinnier side and I'm going to taper it. And the taper is just on 4 sides and I do it in a couple strokes. I'm going to start about 3 inches up. I'm going to take 1 stroke, then I'm going to go about 1.5 inches up, take another stroke, and I'll do it again, rotate it and do it again. So I kind of have a little double taper going on here. Does everybody see how I'm doing that?
Both ends?
Nope, just one end. And that ultimately wants to be about 1/4 inch. And then it should start real easy and it should keep on going. Now this one is a little pudgy. If you pound that in there, it would probably fit in that hole, but then it would make that hole bigger for every time. So it should start in the hole and get going right, kind of right away, and then start to tighten up. This one is still a little bit too fat, so I'm gonna just knock it down just a little bit more. You kind of eyeball it as you're doing this and say, oh, this side looks a little, I didn't make it perfectly square. This one side looks a little bit longer than the other side. So that's good. It starts going right away. It keeps on going, then it starts to tighten up.
Is that one peg that you got? You're not going to split that piece right
Nope,
now.
this is going to make 1 peg.
How far did it go through before it stopped?
Oh,
Oh,
it went in 3 or so inches before it started biting, and then I don't want to keep on jamming it in there. All I want is to know that it's gonna go. And so if I flip it over on this side, it's like, yep, that looks just about right. And then we're gonna put this, now it's a little tiny pudgy here. This will be, well, I'll make another one, but this is kind of, I want to have an example sticking right here so everybody knows what we're making. And again, we are not making a dowel, we are making an octagon of a very particular size.
How long is the taper?
About 3 inches, and then 1.5 inches. About. You don't,
Snap.
yeah.
Why didn't you say? Okay.
Yeah, so my first stroke started about 3 inches away, and then my second stroke started about 1.5 inches away. Yeah.
Double facet.
Yep. And that's kind of our model, what we're looking for. So I'm just going to do this one without talking.